In the previous lecture, we noted that when someone has invested a great deal in a belief, it can be very difficult for them to give it up when they're presented with compelling evidence against it. They may try to find ways to hang on to their belief. Here's an illustration of how someone might try to explain away the evidence against what they believe. Dave believes that dogs are super intelligent spies from the planet Venus. Dave's friends think he has a screw loose and attempt to convince him of his error. But Dave says it's only a matter of weakness now. The spacecraft will arrive and then you'll wish you'd listened to me. We must act immediately and let the government know. But Dave's friend Mary replies, "Look, Dave, dogs pretty obviously aren't space invaders. They are dumb pets. They can't even speak, for goodness sake, let alone communicate with Venus." Dave responds, "Dogs can speak, they just choose to hide their linguistic ability from us. They wait until we've left the room." Dave's friend Pete chips in, "But Venus is a dead planet, Dave. It's horrifically hot and swathed in clouds of acid. Nothing could live on the surface of Venus. Certainly not a dog." Dave replies, "But the dogs don't live on the surface of Venus, Pete. They live below the surface in deep underground bunkers. Why do you think the Venusian dogs want to come here? To escape their planet's horrific atmosphere." Mary has another go at convincing Dave that he's mistaken. "How do Earth dogs communicate with their allies on Venus? I've never found a mysterious alien gizmo hidden in my dog's basket." Dave replies, "Dogs don't use technology that we can observe. Their transmitters are hidden inside their brains." Mary points out that Pete is a vet and he's x-rayed several dogs' heads and never found any transmitters in there. But Dave has yet another ingenious explanation for that. He says, "You're assuming that dogs' brain transmitters would be recognisable to us, but they're actually made of a material indistinguishable from normal brain stuff. That's why the transmitters don't show up on Pete's x-rays. This is advanced secret alien technology we're dealing with. Of course we won't be able to detect it." Mary then says, "But we don't detect any weird signals being directed at Venus from dogs' heads or coming from Venus." Dave responds, "Of course we don't. As I say, this is advanced alien technology far beyond our ability to detect it." Mary says, "How do dogs fly spaceships? They don't even have hands. Dogs can't hold things like steering wheels and joysticks." Dave replies, "You're assuming that the Venusian spacecraft are designed to be used by human hands. Obviously they're not. They're designed to be manoeuvred by a dog's limbs, mouth, tongue and so on." It's clear that this conversation could continue like this forever. Mary and Pete can keep presenting Dave with evidence against Dave's belief that dogs are spies from Venus. But being very clever and ingenious, Dave can keep explaining away that evidence. Dave can continue to make his theory that dogs are spies from Venus be consistent with the evidence. Does that mean that Dave's theory is confirmed? Of course not. Dave's theory that dogs are Venusian spies is a ridiculous theory. One of the warning signs that you've become an intellectual prisoner of a belief system is that you may find yourself habitually explaining away any evidence against what you believe. One way or another, you always find a way of making the evidence consistent with what you believe. Of course, we all recognise that Dave is defending his belief using a very dodgy technique. It's much harder for us to see when we're employing the same dodgy technique to defend our own beliefs, perhaps our beliefs about our career or friends and family, or our political beliefs or our religious beliefs. When we have a great deal invested in a belief or a belief system, such as a religious or political belief system, we can all easily end up like Dave. Just like Dave, we think we're being rational and reasonable. Certainly, Dave is proving to be very clever and creative and very good at coming up with ways of making what he believes consistent with the evidence. But of course, despite Dave's ingenuity, his belief that dogs are spies from the planet Venus isn't reasonable. There is a mountain of compelling evidence against what Dave believes, despite Dave's very clever attempts to explain all of that evidence away. For those who have sealed themselves off inside such a bubble of belief, it can seem to them that they're being reasonable and that those outside are ignorant or deluded. But of course the reverse is actually true. It's Dave who's cut himself off from reality. Being an effective critical thinker involves being aware of the danger of slipping into patterns of thought like Dave's. If you find yourself endlessly explaining away any evidence against what you believe, that's a warning sign that, like Dave, you've become a prisoner of your own belief system. Such bubbles of belief are what in my book Believing Bullshit I call intellectual black holes. That completes this section on evidence. We have looked at what evidence is, distinguished strong and weak evidence, identified when we do have strong evidence, and we've looked at cognitive dissonance and how people often resort to explaining away the evidence against what they believe.